The stars shimmered and twisted as 10,000 alien warships tore through the fabric of space itself. The Zephyrian hegemony's Grand Armada emerged from hyperspace like a plague of metal locusts, each vessel gleaming with the promise of destruction. Fleet Commander Vexithera stood on the bridge of the massive flagship Eternal Dominion, her forearms clasped behind her chitinous back as she surveyed the tactical display with satisfaction. The holographic projection showed the human colony, world of New Geneva, hanging in space like a blue-green jewel. Completely unaware of the doom approaching from the darkness, Vexithera's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among her species. This would be another easy conquest, another primitive civilization added to the hegemony's ever-expanding empire. Around the flagship, vessels from dozens of allied species maintained perfect formation. The crystalline ships of the Veltar reflected starlight like prisms, their weapons charging with deadly rainbow energy. The biomechanical cruisers of the Thekmor pulsed with organic weapons that could dissolve molecular bonds with surgical precision. Sleek Korthak destroyers darted between the larger vessels like silver needles, their crews eager for battle. Vexithera activated her personal communicator and addressed the fleet. "Commanders of the Grand Armada, we have arrived at our destination. Intelligence reports indicate the species has barely achieved basic spaceflight. They use primitive chemical rockets and crude kinetic weapons. Their largest vessels are smaller than our escort fighters." A chorus of acknowledgments came back through the communication array. Some captains laughed openly at the thought of such backward technology. The Veltar fleet commander transmitted an image of what appeared to be human spacecraft, crude metal tubes with chemical exhaust ports. To alien eyes accustomed to ships that bent reality itself, human technology looked like toys made by children. "Maintain formation as we approach their primary world," Vexithera continued. "We will offer them the standard terms: immediate surrender and integration into the hegemony or complete annihilation. Given their primitive state, they will likely choose surrender once they see our overwhelming force." The Armada began its stately advance toward New Geneva. Each ship in the fleet represented centuries of technological advancement and military tradition. The Zephyrian vessels alone mounted weapons that could crack planets, while their shields could withstand the explosion of small stars. The other species brought their own specialties: time dilation fields, matter conversion beams, dimensional displacement cannons. Together they formed an unstoppable force that had conquered hundreds of worlds. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, junior officers monitored long-range sensors, while communications specialists listened for any response from the human colony. The planet below seemed almost peaceful, with orbital stations and civilian traffic moving in predictable patterns. There were no obvious military installations, no defensive satellites, no signs that the humans even knew death was approaching. "Commander," called out the sensor operator, her voice carrying a note of confusion. "I'm detecting a single vessel, moving to intercept our formation." Vexithara's attention snapped to the tactical display. A small red dot had appeared on the screen, accelerating away from the human world toward the massive alien fleet. The computer identified it as a human vessel, roughly 300 meters in length, tiny compared to the kilometer-long battleships of the Armada. "Specifications?" Vexithera asked, studying the lone ship with interest. "Crude metal construction, likely steel alloys with primitive composite armor. I'm detecting what appears to be fusion reactors for power and basic ion drives for propulsion. Weapons appear to be kinetic projectile systems and simple energy weapons." The sensor operator paused, checking her readings. "Commander, this vessel is completely outmatched. It's like a wooden boat challenging a modern fleet." Scattered laughter rippled across the bridge. Several officers made jokes about human stupidity and primitive bravery. Vexithera studied the approaching ship with genuine curiosity. In her long military career, she had seen many species make desperate last stands, but usually with at least some hope of success. This appeared to be simple. Suicide? Perhaps they're carrying diplomats, suggested the communications officer. Many primitive species send negotiators when they realize resistance is futile. Or maybe it's some kind of religious ceremony, added another officer. Some species prefer to die in battle rather than surrender. Vexthara considered both possibilities. The human ship was broadcasting basic identification signals and appeared to be following standard approach protocols. It wasn't making any threatening moves or powering weapon systems. Most likely, the humans had finally detected the Armada and were sending someone to negotiate surrender terms. "Open a general communication channel," she ordered. "All ships are to monitor for human responses. Let's see what these primitives have to say for themselves." The communications array activated, scanning for human transmissions across all known frequencies. Almost immediately, they detected a tight beam signal coming from the approaching vessel. The message was in the human language, but the translation computers quickly converted it into Zephyrian. "Unknown fleet. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Defiance. You have entered human territorial space without authorization. Please state your intentions and prepare to be boarded for inspection." The bridge fell silent for a moment before erupting in disbelieving laughter. The audacity of the message was stunning. A single primitive vessel was ordering an armada of 10,000 ships to submit to inspection. "Did they just threaten to board us?" asked the tactical officer, his voice filled with amazement. "I believe they did," Vexthara replied, her mandibles clicking with amusement. "These humans are either incredibly brave or completely insane." The lone human ship continued its approach, maintaining a steady course directly toward the center of the alien formation. It showed no signs of slowing down or changing direction, as if the crew genuinely believed they could challenge the entire Armada. The ship's modest weapons remained powered down, and its shields generated barely enough energy to deflect cosmic radiation. Vexthara made her decision. This would be an excellent opportunity to demonstrate the hegemony's power, while showing mercy to a clearly outmatched opponent. The destruction of this single ship would serve as a perfect example to the rest of humanity about the futility of resistance. "All ships, maintain formation," she broadcast to the fleet. "This appears to be a gesture of defiance from the local military. We will allow them to approach and deliver whatever message they carry. After that, we'll provide a demonstration of our capabilities before moving on to accept their planet's surrender." The Armada continued its advance, 10,000 ships moving in perfect synchronization toward the blue world below. The single human vessel grew larger on the tactical display, but it remained pathetically small compared to even the smallest alien escort. To Vexthara's experienced eye, it looked like an ancient sailing ship challenging a modern aircraft carrier. As the distance closed, more details became visible. The human ship Defiance appeared to be well maintained despite its primitive construction. Its hull showed signs of recent upgrades and modifications, though nothing that would significantly improve its combat capabilities. The crew was probably composed of volunteers or fanatics, willing to die for their species rather than accept the inevitable. Vexthara felt a moment of respect for their courage, even if it was ultimately pointless. In a few minutes, this brave but foolish gesture would be over, and humanity would join the hundreds of other species that had learned to bow before the might of the Zephyrian hegemony. It was almost sad how predictable these primitive civilizations could be. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, her hands clasped calmly behind her back as she watched the massive alien fleet fill the view screen. 10,000 ships stretched across space like a metal constellation, their combined mass easily dwarfing anything humanity had ever built. Most people would have felt terror at such a sight. Chen felt only a cold, calculating focus. "Communications. Open a channel to the alien flagship," she ordered, her voice steady and professional. "Channel open, Commander," replied Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "We're broadcasting on all standard frequencies." Chen stepped forward, knowing that this moment would likely determine the fate of not just her crew, but possibly all of humanity. She had studied the intelligence reports about the Zephyrian hegemony and their methods. They preferred overwhelming force followed by demands for surrender. Today they would learn that humans had a different approach to impossible situations. "Unknown Fleet Commander, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Defiance. I am requesting that you halt your advance and explain your presence in human space. We are prepared to discuss any legitimate concerns through proper diplomatic channels." The response came quickly, transmitted in heavily accented English that suggested machine translation. The voice belonged to something definitely not human, with clicks and buzzing sounds that made Chen's skin crawl. Primitive human vessel, I am Fleet Commander Vexithera of the Zephyrian Hegemony's Grand Armada. You will surrender immediately and prepare for integration into our empire. Your species will be evaluated for usefulness. Compliance will result in minimal casualties. Resistance will result in complete extermination. Chen exchanged glances with her senior officers. Major Reynolds, the ship's marine commander, shook his head grimly. Dr. Martinez, the chief science officer, checked her readings one more time, before nodding confirmation. The alien fleet was exactly what their long-range sensors had detected. A massive invasion force with technology far beyond current human capabilities. Commander Vexithera, Chen replied, her voice taking on a tone that her crew recognized as dangerously calm. Let me make sure I understand your position. You have brought an armed fleet into our territory without invitation, demanded our surrender, and threatened to exterminate my species if we refuse. That is correct, human. Your primitive technology cannot oppose us. Submit now and your deaths will be quick. Chen was quiet for a long moment, staring at the alien ships that filled the screen. Each one was larger and more advanced than her own vessel. Their weapons could probably destroy the Defiance with a single shot. By any rational calculation, resistance was not just futile, but completely insane. Understood, she finally said. You have chosen poorly. The alien commander's response carried what might have been amusement. You speak of choice, primitive one? You have no choices. You have only the illusion of choice. We'll see about that, Chen said quietly, then made a gesture to Lieutenant Torres. Cut communication with the flagship. Open all channels for general broadcast. All channels open, Commander. Chen activated the ship's general communication system, sending her voice across every frequency the Defiance could access. Her words would reach not just the alien fleet, but every human ship, station, and settlement within range. More importantly, they would reach Earth itself. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the UES Defiance. We stand before an alien fleet that demands our surrender and threatens our extinction. They believe they have given us no choice. They are wrong. She paused, watching as her communications officer confirmed that the message was being recorded and transmitted across human space. 4.5 billion years ago, life began on Earth in hostile seas under a poisonous sky. For all that time, our world tried to kill us. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, mass extinctions. Our planet threw everything it had at life, and life refused to surrender. We are the children of survivors who looked at impossible odds and said, "Not today." The bridge crew listened in rapt attention. They had heard variations of this speech before, but never delivered with such quiet intensity. Every challenge that should have destroyed us only made us stronger. We learned to make fire in the darkness. We learned to grow food in barren soil. We learned to cure diseases that killed millions. We learned to fly when physics said we were too heavy. We learned to split atoms when chemistry said they were indivisible. We learned to touch the stars when common sense said space was too vast. On the tactical display, the alien fleet continued its steady advance. They seemed unconcerned by the human transmission, probably interpreting it as some kind of primitive ritual or prayer. We have never been the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, but we have always been the most stubborn. When the universe says impossible, we say, watch us. When physics says you can't, we rewrite the textbooks. When death says your time is up, we invent medicine. When space says you don't belong here, we build rockets. Chen's voice grew stronger, carrying the weight of human history and determination. Today, an alien fleet tells us we have no choice but to surrender or die. They have clearly never met a human before. We are the species that turned the impossible into the inevitable through sheer bloody-minded refusal to accept limitations. We are the children of Earth, the planet that spent 4 billion years trying to kill us and failed. The transmission continued to broadcast across human space, carrying a message that would be remembered long after this day ended. They think they know what humans are capable of. They think they understand our technology and our limitations. They think they can predict our behavior based on their experience with other conquered species. They are about to learn the most important lesson in the history of first contact. Never underestimate a species that learned to make the impossible possible just to spite the universe. Chen looked directly at the main view screen, as if she could see through the metal and energy shields to the alien commanders beyond. We didn't come this far just to surrender to the first bullies we met among the stars. We didn't spend thousands of years learning to break the rules of reality just to follow someone else's rules now. And we certainly didn't become the apex, predators of our own world, just to bow down to apex predators from another world. The communications officer signaled that the message was being received across the Sol system and beyond. Every human settlement, every ship, every outpost would hear these words. So to the alien fleet demanding our surrender, you wanted to know what humans are capable of. You're about to find out. And to my fellow humans listening to this transmission, remember who you are. Remember what we've overcome. Remember that we have never accepted the impossible and we're not about to start now. Chen nodded to Lieutenant Torres, who cut the general broadcast and reopened the channel to the alien flagship. Commander Vexthara, Chen said, her voice now carrying an edge that made her crew straighten unconsciously. You asked for our response to your ultimatum. Here it is. The UES Defiance respectfully declines your generous offer of slavery or death. Instead, we counter-propose that you turn around and leave our space immediately. This is your only warning. The alien response was immediate and filled with what sounded like laughter. Your bravado is amusing, human, but irrelevant. One primitive ship cannot oppose 10,000 advanced vessels. Prepare to be destroyed as an example to the rest of your species. Chen smiled grimly and looked at her weapons officer. Major Reynolds, bring all systems online. It's time to show our guests what happens when someone threatens our children. The Defiance began to accelerate toward the center of the alien formation, one small ship carrying the hopes and fury of an entire species into battle against impossible odds, just the way humans liked it. The UES Defiance accelerated directly toward the heart of the alien formation, its fusion engines burning bright blue against the darkness of space. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Fleet Commander Vexthara watched the tactical display, with a mixture of amusement and professional interest. The human ship was moving fast for such primitive technology, but it was still hopelessly outmatched. Tactical assessment, she ordered, settling back in her command chair. Single human vessel, approximately 300 meters long. Basic fusion propulsion, crude armor plating, primitive shield generators that barely register on our sensors, reported her tactical officer. Estimated weapons include kinetic projectile systems and low-power energy beams. Total combat effectiveness, negligible. Vexthara's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. They're either planning to ram us or hoping to get close enough to inflict some token damage before being destroyed. Either way, it's a futile gesture. She activated the fleet communication system. All ships, maintain formation. I want a measured response to this provocation. Battle Group 7, move to intercept. Disable their engines first, then destroy them slowly. Let the other humans watch and learn what resistance accomplishes. 100 alien warships broke formation and moved to engage the single human vessel. Each ship in Battle Group 7 was larger and more heavily armed than the Defiance. Their combined firepower could have reduced a small moon to molten slag. Against one primitive human ship, it was massive overkill, but Vexthara wanted to make a point. The Defiance continued its charge, showing no signs of slowing down or changing course. At this distance, the human ship should have been scanning the alien vessels, trying to identify weak points or escape routes. Instead, its sensors remained focused forward, as if the crew was completely ignoring the ships moving to destroy them. Interesting, muttered Vexthara. Are they really going to ignore our interceptors and continue toward the main fleet? Her question was answered moments later, when the Defiance opened fire. But the weapons that emerged from the human ship were nothing like what their intelligence had predicted. Instead of primitive kinetic rounds or basic energy beams, Space itself seemed to twist and bend around the human vessel. "What in the seven hells?" gasped the tactical officer, staring at his instruments in disbelief. The first alien ship in Battle Group 7 simply vanished. One moment it was there, a kilometer-long cruiser bristling with weapons and shields. The next moment there was nothing but empty space and a rapidly expanding cloud of exotic particles. "Report!" Vexthara barked, rising from her chair. "I don't understand the readings," the tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. "The ship didn't explode or break apart. It just compressed. The entire mass was crushed down to a point smaller than an atom, then dispersed as energy. The second ship in the battle group fired its main weapons at the human vessel. Massive energy beams that could melt through a kilometer of solid steel. The beam struck the Defiance and passed right through it, as if the ship wasn't entirely there. At the same moment, the alien cruiser began to stretch, its hull elongating like taffy being pulled apart. The crew's screams echoed across the communication channels as their ship was torn apart at the molecular level. "Impossible," Vexthara whispered, watching as a third ship simply folded in on itself, its three-dimensional structure becoming a flat plane that scattered into cosmic dust. The Defiance moved through the battle group like a shark through a school of fish. Whatever weapons it was using seemed to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. Ships didn't just die. They were unmade, their very existence rewritten by technologies that shouldn't have been possible. "Get me a full sensor sweep of that ship," Vexthara ordered. "I want to know what we're dealing with." The results that came back made no sense. The human vessel appeared to be phasing in and out of normal spacetime, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Its weapons weren't generating energy. They were manipulating gravity, time, and space itself. According to the readings, the Defiance was somehow creating localized regions where the laws of physics operated differently. "Commander," called the communications officer, "I'm receiving fragmentary transmissions from Battle Group 7. They're reporting that their weapons are malfunctioning. Some ships are reporting that their energy beams are firing backwards through time, striking them before they even activate their weapons." Vexthara felt a chill run down her spine. She had seen advanced technology before, had conquered species, with weapons that seemed like magic, but this was something else entirely. This was technology that made reality itself a weapon. The Defiance cleared Battle Group 7, leaving behind only wreckage and expanding clouds of matter that had been restructured at the quantum level. The human ship's path had taken it through 100 alien vessels in less than 10 minutes, and not a single one had managed to inflict any damage in return. "All ships open fire," Vexthara commanded. "Concentrate everything on that vessel." 10,000 alien ships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams that could crack planets, missiles that could destroy fleets, particle weapons that could disintegrate anything they touched. All of it converged on the single human ship. The combined firepower was enough to sterilize entire star systems. The Defiance flickered, becoming translucent for a moment as the massive barrage passed harmlessly through it. Then it solidified again and continued its advance completely undamaged. "How is this possible?" demanded the tactical officer. "Our weapons can't even target it properly. It's like trying to shoot a shadow that keeps moving between dimensions." Vexthara watched in growing horror as her fleet, the largest military force ever assembled by the hegemony, proved completely unable to harm a single human ship. The Defiance moved through their formations with contemptuous ease, its impossible weapons reaching out to unmake ship after ship. "All vessels, evasive maneuvers," she ordered. "Maintain distance from the human ship." But there was nowhere to run. The Defiance seemed to predict every move, arriving at intercept points before the alien ships had even begun to change course. Its weapons operated outside normal causality, effects preceding causes, results manifesting before actions were taken. A massive Veltar crystalline battleship tried to ram the human vessel, its captain choosing death over the humiliation of retreat. The Defiance passed through the alien ship like it was made of mist, while the battleship emerged from the encounter, transformed into a structure of pure energy that slowly dissipated into space. "Commander," the communications officer called out, his voice tight with fear. "I'm getting reports from across the fleet. Ships are reporting temporal anomalies, gravitational distortions, and reality failures. Some captains are requesting permission to retreat." Vexthara looked at the tactical display, watching as red indicators marking destroyed ships multiplied across the screen. In less than an hour, the Defiance had eliminated nearly 1,000 vessels from her fleet. The humans weren't just winning, they were demonstrating that everything the hegemony thought they knew about warfare was obsolete. "Open a channel to the human ship," she ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Channel open, Commander." "Human vessel," Vexithera transmitted. "I demand to know what you are. This technology is impossible. These weapons cannot exist." The response came immediately, in the calm voice of the human commander. "Commander Vexithera, you made a fundamental error in your assessment of humanity. You assumed that because our technology appears primitive, we are primitive. You forgot to ask the most important question. What would humans do if they absolutely refused to accept that something was impossible?" The transmission continued as another 100 alien ships vanished from existence, their crews never knowing what hit them. "We didn't accept that heavier-than-air flight was impossible. We didn't accept that space was too vast to cross. We didn't accept that the atom was indivisible. And we certainly didn't accept that the laws of physics were absolute. When reality told us no, we asked why not. When the universe set limits, we found loopholes. When physics said something couldn't be done, we did it anyway." Vexithara realized with dawning terror that she had made the worst mistake of her military career. She had assumed that a technologically primitive species would remain primitive. She had never considered that humans might have chosen to appear primitive, while developing technologies that operated beyond conventional understanding. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion had become a scene of barely controlled chaos. Warning lights flashed red across every console as reports poured in from across the fleet. Fleet Commander Vexithara stood rigid at the center of it all, watching. Her tactical display transformed from a symbol of overwhelming force into a monument to impossible defeat. "Report from Battle Group 12, called the communications officer, his voice cracking with strain. "They're requesting immediate evacuation. Their ships are experiencing temporal displacement. Some vessels are receiving their own distress calls from 30 minutes in the future." "Battle Group 15 reports gravitational anomalies," added another officer. 3 ships have been compressed into neutron star density while still maintaining their original volume. The crew is somehow still alive, but existing in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Vexithara's forearms trembled as she tried to process what was happening. In her 200 years of military service, she had seen technologies that bent the laws of physics. But this was different. The humans weren't bending the laws, they were rewriting them entirely. The UES Defiance continued its systematic destruction of the Grand Armada, moving through formations with predatory grace. Every weapon the aliens tried to use against it either passed harmlessly through the ship or somehow turned back on its wielder. Ships fired missiles that exploded backwards, through time, damaging the vessels before they were even launched. Energy beams curved around the human ship and struck their own generators. "How many ships have we lost?" Vexithara asked, though she dreaded the answer. 4,700 and counting, Commander," replied the tactical officer. "And the rate is increasing. The human ship seems to be adapting to our tactics faster than we can deploy them." On the main view screen, the Defiance appeared to split into multiple copies of itself, each one engaging a different section of the fleet. But sensor readings showed that there was still only one ship. It was somehow existing in multiple locations, simultaneously while maintaining its singular identity. "Commander," the science officer called out, "I'm reading massive distortions in local space-time. The human vessel appears to be generating a field that allows it to operate outside normal causality. It's not just predicting our movements. It's experiencing our future actions and responding to them in our present." Vexithara felt her confidence crumble entirely. She had built her career on understanding enemy capabilities and developing counter-strategies. But how could anyone develop tactics against an opponent that could see the future manipulate gravity like a toy, and apparently ignore the fundamental structure of reality. All ships, full retreat, she commanded. Maximum distance from the human vessel. But even retreat proved impossible. Ships that tried to escape found themselves moving backward, their engines somehow reversing the flow of time. Others discovered that the space they were trying to flee into was being folded back on itself, creating endless loops that trapped them in repeating cycles of movement. "Commander Vexithara," came the voice of the human captain across the communication channel. "Your fleet is attempting to retreat. I'm afraid I can't allow that until we've finished our conversation." "What conversation?" Vexithara demanded. "You're systematically destroying my fleet." "Only because you threatened my species with extinction," Commander Chen replied calmly. "I'm simply demonstrating why that was an error in judgment. You see, humans have a particular talent for turning our greatest weaknesses into our greatest strengths." Another 1,000 ships vanished from the tactical display, their crews never understanding what had unmade them from existence. "You look at us and see primitive technology," Chen continued. "Chemical rockets, metal hulls, basic energy weapons. What you don't see is that we chose to appear primitive. We learned long ago that the most dangerous predator is the one that doesn't look dangerous." Vexithara's science officer was frantically scanning the human ship, trying to understand its true nature. "Commander," he called out, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures deep within the human vessel. It's not using conventional technology at all. The primitive exterior appears to be camouflage for something far more advanced." "We spent centuries asking a simple question," Chen's voice continued. "What if the impossible isn't actually impossible? What if the universe just hasn't been asked the right way? What if reality is more flexible than physics textbooks suggest?" The answer to those questions was playing out across the battlefield. Human technology hadn't evolved beyond conventional physics. It had evolved beyond conventional thinking. The Defiance operated on principles that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolute rules. "You want to know what we are?" Chen asked. "We're the species that refuse to accept limitations. When our planet tried to kill us with ice ages, we invented fire. When disease tried to destroy us, we invented medicine. When gravity tried to keep us on the ground, we invented flight. When the speed of light tried to limit our expansion, we found ways around it." Vexithara watched as her flagship's sister ship, the Infinite Glory, simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not damaged. It had never been there at all, as if the universe had decided to edit it out of history. "Every impossible thing you've seen today started as a human child asking why not," Chen explained. "Every weapon that shouldn't exist began with a human scientist saying, 'What if we tried this anyway?' Every violation of physics was born from human stubbornness, refusing to accept that something couldn't be done." The communications officer turned to Vexithara with panic in her eyes. "Commander, I'm receiving distress calls from ships that haven't been built yet. Our temporal communications are picking up Mayday signals from vessels scheduled for construction next year." "Impossible," Vexithara whispered, but the word had lost all meaning. Everything happening today was impossible, yet it was undeniably real. "We turned our greatest weakness into our greatest weapon," Chen's transmission continued. "Our refusal to accept reality became our ability to reshape it. Our stubborn insistence that there had to be a better way became the foundation for technologies that operate outside conventional understanding." Vexithara realized with crystal clarity that she had led her fleet into a trap more sophisticated than anything she could have imagined. The humans had allowed the hegemony to approach, had let them believe they were dealing with primitives, had encouraged the aliens to bring their entire fleet into range before revealing their true capabilities. "You're not primitives at all," she said aloud, the understanding hitting her like a physical blow. "No," Chen replied, somehow hearing her words across the communication channel that should have been closed. "We're the children of a world that spent 4 billion years trying to teach us that survival was impossible. We learned the lesson, but not the one our planet intended. We learned that impossible just means hasn't been done yet." The tactical display showed fewer than 5,000 ships remaining from the original 10,000. The survivors were scattered across local space, their formations broken, their crews paralyzed by the realization that everything they thought they knew about warfare had become obsolete in a single engagement. Please. Vexathara found herself saying, the word foreign to her proud species. Please, we surrender. We yield to your superior technology. I appreciate the offer, Chen replied. But I'm not interested in your surrender. I'm interested in your understanding. You see, Commander, humanity doesn't want to conquer the galaxy. We want to be left alone to explore it in peace. Today's demonstration is meant to ensure that peace. The Defiance had stopped its systematic destruction of the fleet, but it continued to move through the alien formations like a predator marking its territory. Ships that came too close simply found themselves relocated to distant parts of the battlefield, transported through space by means their crews couldn't comprehend. This is our message to the galaxy, Chen said. Humanity claims no empire beyond our own worlds. We seek no dominion over other species. But we will not tolerate threats to our children or our future. Any species that attempts to conquer or destroy us will discover what happens when you challenge a civilization that learned to turn impossibility into everyday reality. Vexathara looked around her bridge at officers who had lost all faith in their own technology and training. They had come here as conquerors and had been reduced to witnesses of their own irrelevance in less than 4 hours. 4 hours after the engagement began, silence fell across the battlefield. The UES Defiance hung motionless in space, surrounded by the scattered remnants of what had once been the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Of the 10,000 ships that had arrived with such confidence, fewer than 3,000 remained functional. The rest had been reduced to expanding clouds of exotic particles, victims of weapons that operated beyond conventional understanding. Fleet Commander Vexathara stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, staring at tactical displays that told a story of absolute defeat. Her flagship had survived only because the human vessel had allowed it to survive. The realization burned through her pride like acid, leaving behind only the bitter knowledge that her entire military career had been rendered meaningless in a single afternoon. Damage report, she said quietly, though she already knew the answer would be meaningless. Minimal physical damage to remaining vessels, reported her tactical officer, his voice hollow with shock. But Commander, I don't think our weapons will ever work properly again. The human ship did something to local spacetime. Our targeting systems keep trying to shoot at things that haven't happened yet. Across the fleet, surviving ships reported similar problems. Energy weapons that fired backward through time, navigation, systems that showed destinations in parallel dimensions, life support systems that somehow provided air that hadn't been processed yet. The humans had done more than defeat them. They had fundamentally altered the nature of reality in this region of space. Commander, the communications officer called out, the human vessel is approaching our position. On the main view screen, the Defiance grew larger as it closed the distance. It moved with the same unhurried confidence it had displayed throughout the battle. A predator that had proven its dominance and now approached to deliver its final message. Open communications, Vexathara ordered, knowing she had no choice but to hear whatever the humans had to say. Commander Chen's image appeared on the screen, and for the first time, Vexathara could see the human face behind the voice that had delivered such impossible destruction. The woman looked remarkably ordinary. No obvious cybernetic enhancements, no signs of genetic modification, nothing to suggest she was anything more than a baseline member of her species. It was somehow the most terrifying thing Vexathara had seen all day. Commander Vexathara, Chen said, her voice carrying the same calm professionalism she had maintained throughout the battle. I believe we have concluded our demonstration. Do you have any questions about human capabilities? Vexathara found her voice after a long moment. How? She asked. How is any of this possible? Your technology appears primitive. Your ship is smaller than our escort fighters. Your species has barely achieved interstellar travel. How did you do this? Chen smiled, and the expression was somehow more unsettling than any threat could have been. That's the wrong question, Commander. The right question is, what happens when a species spends its entire evolutionary history being told that survival is impossible? The human captain gestured to something off-screen, and the image shifted to show the interior of the Defiance. The ship's bridge looked remarkably ordinary. Metal panels, conventional displays, crew members who appeared entirely human. But Vexithara's enhanced vision caught details that made her skin crawl. The shadows fell in directions that suggested the interior existed in more than 3 dimensions. The air itself seemed to shimmer with possibilities that hadn't been realized yet. For 4.5 billion years our planet tried to kill us, Chen continued. Ice ages, mass extinctions, volcanic catastrophes, asteroid impacts. Every few million years Earth would reset the evolutionary clock and force life to start over. But we kept surviving. We kept adapting. We kept refusing to accept that existence was impossible. The image shifted again, showing what appeared to be a normal engine room. But the fusion reactors were doing things that fusion reactors couldn't do, converting matter directly into manipulated spacetime, feeding the ship with energy that came from unmaking small pieces of reality and rebuilding them according to human specifications. Humanity learned something that most species never have to learn, Chen said. We learned that the universe's definition of impossible is just a suggestion. When reality told us we couldn't survive the next catastrophe, we survived anyway. When physics said we couldn't fly, we flew anyway. When the speed of light said we couldn't reach the stars, we reached them anyway. Vexithara realized that she was looking at the end result of 4 billion years of evolutionary stubbornness. Humanity hadn't just developed advanced technology. They had developed a fundamental refusal to accept limitations that other species considered natural law. The weapons you saw today, Chen continued, they're not really weapons at all. They're tools for asking reality politely to reconsider its position. When reality says no, we ask again. When it says impossible, we demonstrate otherwise. When it says the laws of physics are absolute, we show them how flexible those laws can be when properly motivated. The tactical officer leaned over to Vexithara and whispered, "Commander, our science teams are analyzing the quantum signature of the human ship. According to their readings, it shouldn't exist. The vessel appears to be constructed from materials that exist in a state of controlled impossibility." "That's because it is," Chen said, somehow hearing the whispered conversation across a closed communication channel. "The Defiance is built from elements that exist because we insisted they should exist. Its armor is made from alloys that are stronger than steel because we refused to accept that steel couldn't be stronger. Its engines run on fusion reactions that produce more energy than they consume, because we asked fusion very nicely to consider breaking the laws of thermodynamics." Vexithara felt the last of her preconceptions crumble. She had assumed that advanced technology meant following the laws of physics more efficiently. The humans had taken the opposite approach. They had convinced physics to follow their laws instead. "This is our gift to the galaxy," Chen said, her voice taking on a tone that mixed warning with genuine sadness. "We're sharing the knowledge that impossible things are only impossible until someone refuses to believe that. But we're also delivering a warning that some species have already chosen to ignore." The image shifted one final time, showing the human colony world of New Geneva in the distance, peaceful, undefended, completely vulnerable to any species that chose to attack it. "Humanity doesn't seek empire or dominion," Chen continued. "We want to explore the galaxy, meet new species, learn new things, and push the boundaries of what's possible. But we will not tolerate threats to our children or our future. Any species that attempts to conquer or destroy us will face the same choice we've always faced: adapt or be replaced by something that can." The communication channel filled with static for a moment, then cleared to show Chen's face once more. "Commander, Vexithara, you and your surviving ships are free to leave. Return to your hegemony and deliver this message. Humanity has moved beyond the need for vast fleets to defend ourselves. Sometimes one ship crewed by people who refuse to accept defeat is more than enough." The Defiance began to turn away from the alien flagship, preparing to return to its patrol route. "Oh, and Commander," Chen added, "your ship's weapons and navigation systems will return to normal function once you've left human space. Consider it an incentive to spread the word, rather than attempt revenge." Vexathera watched the human ship accelerate away, its impossible engines bending space-time like a plaything. Around her, the bridge crew worked frantically to restore basic ship functions, though half their instruments continued to display readings that made no sense according to conventional physics. "Set course for hegemony space," she ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maximum speed." As the surviving ships of the Grand Armada limped away from human territory, Vexathera began composing the most difficult report of her career. How could she explain to the hegemony leadership that they had encountered a species that treated the impossible as merely inconvenient? How could she make them understand that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't any particular technology, but their fundamental refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible? Behind them, the UES Defiance resumed its patrol of human space, one small ship carrying the hopes and determination of a species that had learned to make the impossible inevitable through nothing more than stubborn refusal to surrender to the universe's limitations. In the months that followed, word of the engagement spread across the galaxy. Some species dismissed the reports as exaggeration or propaganda. Others began to study human civilization more carefully, trying to understand how a supposedly primitive species had developed such impossible capabilities. But those who were wise took the lesson to heart. Never underestimate a species that learned to survive by making the impossible merely improbable and the improbable merely inconvenient. Never challenge a civilization that turned their greatest weakness, their refusal to accept reality's limitations, into their greatest strength, and never ever threaten the children of a world that spent 4 billion years trying to teach them that existence was impossible, only to discover